Hi, welcome to my Tales from the Collections. I'm Carys, the archive trainee, and I'll be talking to you about our documentation relating to the Grand Tour. I hope you enjoy it. The Grand Tour is best known as an ostentatious event carried out primarily by upper-class British travellers during the 18th century, who would embark on a lengthy tour to conclude their education. This included young men and sometimes women who were approaching adulthood and preparing to enter public life. But touring wasn't just for the youngsters. If you could afford it, you could commence a tour for personal fulfillment. It is important to note that, although primarily known for its prevalence in the 18th century, these kinds of tours took place in the 16th and 17th century, and were not only carried out by the British, but also by the French, Russians, and Germans. The journey along the Grand Tour would typically follow the same route. The travellers would depart from England and cross the Channel to enter France, then proceed through Germany and into Switzerland before reaching the final destination of Italy, which was by far the most popular country to tour through. Whilst on the tour, these aristocratic travellers would indulge in extravagant activities around fashion, drawing, antiques, and of course, food and drink. It is thanks to these activities, which produce diaries, receipts and paintings, that we have evidence of the Grand Tour in the archives today. However, it is always important to remember that, although they are useful primary sources, documents such as diaries are biased to the author's point of view and do not always reflect the true nature of the location they are visiting. The first few documents I'd like to show you are from the Nudigate Family of Arbury collection held at Warwickshire County Record Office. For those of you who are not yet familiar with the Nudigates, they were a prominent local family who were landowners, politicians and entrepreneurs. Born in 1719, Sir Roger Nudigate unexpectedly inherited the estate at a young age after the death of his brother in 1734. Upon finishing his Oxford education in circa 1736, Sir Roger embarked on his first grand tour, which he would undertake before he could receive his patrimony, also known as inheritance, and enter public life. In 1774, Sir Roger would undertake a second tour. In this section, we're going to browse through a couple of documents taken from both tours. To show you just how grand this grand tour was, I've provided a summary of Sir Roger's itinerary, based on research conducted by James Sandbrook in Sir Roger Nudigate, A Life. Pause the video anytime to read through the summary. Perhaps you may have visited some of these places before. All in all, Sir Roger Nudigate and his companions spent more than 2 years travelling on this grand tour, so it really was grand. Now you've got an understanding of how far and wide this tour was, we can begin to look at what documentation was produced from it and get a glimpse of what Sir Roger took away from such a plentiful experience. We're going to start with this mid-18th century volume of notes and sketches relating to prominent Italian families. This volume takes us on a pictorial guide of Italy through Nudigate's eyes and provides a record of his growing artistic skill. At the top we have a drawing of the front and back of the statue of Juno Sospita, a Roman goddess. Underneath is the tomb of the Great Dukes of Tuscany, otherwise known as the Medici Chapels in Florence. Sir Roger must have run out of time during his visit, as he's only managed to draw half of the chapel. These tours were often conducted rapidly, from attraction to attraction, town to town, and country to country. As the tour continues, Nudigate's artistic skills develop further to become more detailed and were presented with some stunning sketches. On the left-hand side, we have a beautiful blue watercolour sketch of the Apennine Colossus statue, which is situated in the gardens of the Villa di Pratolino, the site of a former noble villa in Tuscany. On the right, we have possibly my favourite sketch, which shows the Tribuna Room, an octagon-shaped room at the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, containing famous paintings and sculptures. This gallery was very popular during the Grand Tour and would have been high up in the traveller's itinerary. Nudigate has captured the grandness of the room, the high ceiling decorated with 6,000 mother-of-pearl shells, right down to the exquisite pattern on the marble floor. Let's move on to look at a collection of loose sketches and other ephemera created by Sir Roger Nudigate on his second Grand Tour. This collection of sketches differ from those of his first Grand Tour, in that they are not bound neatly into a volume, but rather loose and sporadic in their detailing, with often little writing given to identify the subject matter. However, like his bound volume we've just seen, most of these sketches focus on Sir Roger's time spent touring Italy. These sketches vary in use of colour, detail and theme. So for example here we have a watercolour drawing of ruins with absolutely no useful identifying details, which means we have to make an educated guess. Could it be Tempio di Diana or the Temple of Minerva Medica in Rome? In this example, we have a detailed drawing of the interior of a building, where Sir Roger has shown an interest in the design of the ceiling. Underneath is a written line of useful information that says, "Inn at Tolentino Post House, 4 rooms arched with stones." So we know that this is a drawing of a post house that he likely stayed in. A post house was an inn that accommodated travellers but also kept horses to be rented by these travellers, or for the use of post riders who delivered post on horseback. In this drawing, Sir Roger has depicted an unusual scene near Castel Nuovo, a medieval castle in the centre of Naples. Here we can see what looks like 2 trees with legs and a person with a spinning wheel. Interpreting this required a bit of team effort at the Record Office, but eventually we settled on a likely possibility that it documents rope makers. If we compare this drawing to a stereograph taken by C.H. Graves titled "Making Rope, Naples, Italy," we can see a man holding a bunch of string-like material waiting to be turned into a rope. From what I can gather, a person would hold the fibrous material from a short distance away, and it would be hand-spun into the spinning wheel, which would twist and bind the fibres together to make yarns, which in turn was then spun to form a rope. Drawings and paintings of scenes like these, no matter how trivial, are so important because they provide us with all sorts of information about the places in which they travelled. It shows us what could be learnt from such a tour in terms of foreign heritage and culture. Moving on to a different collection now, the next item we'll be looking at is held within the Fielding family of Newham Paddocks collection. In this collection are the Pennant papers. The Pennants were a prominent family in Flintshire who held estates until the family line died out in the mid-19th century. Whilst the Pennants did not hail from Warwickshire, I believe these documents came to be in the Fielding collection through Louisa Pennant's marriage to Lord Fielding, who often resided at Newham Paddocks. Thomas Pennant in particular was a well-known naturalist, writer and traveller, but for this next document we're going to look at some notes made by his son David Pennant. The bundle of papers attributed to David Pennant contains a wonderful supply of information about his interests, but the jewel to behold is his daintily written itinerary whilst on the Grand Tour. The itinerary, which I have briefly summarised above, is 2 pages long and brief in detail, but gives us place names and presumably arrival dates, as well as the odd note about his agenda alongside it. Although brief, it reveals interesting information about where Pennant travelled to and where he spent the most time. For example, this document tells us that he arrived in Vienna on the 27th of August 1799 and stayed there until the 9th of October, a total of 43 days. As expected, Italy was also an important part of Pennant's tour, as he went back and forth between Rome and Naples between November and April. Our last document comes from the Hemming family collection, specifically Mrs. C. Hemming's personal papers. Not all tours are a grand tour, but they can still be grand. To conclude this presentation, I've thrown in a document that is not specifically from a grand tour, but contains a lengthy travel itinerary that could have been influenced by its elaborate agenda. This document shows an itinerary of a 5-day tour for the Henley and Arden Women's Institute, organised by Stockland Motors Tours. To the left, I have briefly summarised the stops on their tour. Although we can't conclusively say it's influenced by the Grand Tour, this itinerary does seem to reflect the busyness and extravagance of this former tradition. Well, that's the end of my Tales of the collection. I hope you found it informative and will consider visiting us in the future. If anyone's interested, I've included a list of other documents at the Record Office which relate to the Grand Tour. I've also included some reading references that have influenced this tale of the collections. Thanks for watching.